Everyone's always told you that renting is just throwing money away, right? Like literally setting cash on fire. I hear it all the time. And honestly, they're not entirely wrong. But they definitely aren't entirely right either. And the part they usually leave out? Yeah, it's the part that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So today, we're having the conversation about housing that nobody really wants to have, mainly because it challenges one of the most deeply held beliefs in personal finance. The idea that renting is just for people who haven't quite figured it out yet. Think of me as that smart friend who finally sat down and did the actual math. The math nobody showed you before you signed a 30-year mortgage. This explainer is going to give you total financial clarity with absolutely zero housing guilt. All right, Section 1, the real monthly math. Let's see what homeownership actually costs. Okay, let's dive into this. Right now, the median existing home in the US is sitting at nearly $400,000, $396,800 to be exact. If you put 20% down and finance the rest at, say, a 6.5% rate, your mortgage payment is roughly $2,023. But wait, that mortgage is literally just the starting point. You have to add property taxes of about $364 a month, homeowners insurance around $150, and routine maintenance, which experts say cost hundreds every single month. When you add the whole shebang together, your real monthly cost of homeownership lands right around $3,000. Now compare that to the national median rent for a two-bedroom apartment, which is currently sitting around $1,450. That is a $1,550 monthly gap between renting and buying at today's prices. Just let that number sink in for a second. Over 5 years, that's $93,000 in additional housing costs, just for the privilege of being an owner instead of a renter. Which brings us to Section 2, the 43x wealth gap between owners and renters. Now, before you pause this explainer to go hug your landlord, hold on just a second, because the case for buying is actually incredibly real. Check this out. The average homeowner in the U.S. has a median net worth of $430,000. The average renter? Just $10,000. Homeowners are literally 43 times wealthier than renters on average. That is a completely life-changing gap. But we have to challenge why that gap actually exists. It's not real estate magic. It exists primarily because of forced savings. You see, every mortgage payment is a mandatory contribution to an asset. Ask yourself honestly, if you rented and pocketed that $1,550 difference we just talked about, would you actually invest it every single month for 20 years? Probably not, right? Most renters simply spend it. A mortgage enforces the financial discipline that, let's be real, most of us just don't have on our own. Moving on to Section 3, the break-even horizon. Let's talk about when buying actually makes sense. The absolutely crucial point here is knowing your timeline, which brings us to the single most important number that should govern every rent versus buy decision right now, your break-even horizon. Buying a home comes with massive sunk transaction costs that a renter never, ever pays. You're looking at $8,000 to $20,000 in closing costs just to buy that medium home. And when you eventually sell, broker commissions and transfer taxes will eat up another $24,000 to $32,000. Because of those massive fees, literally walking out the door, buying only makes financial sense if you stay put for at least 5 to 7 years. If you sell in year 3, you almost certainly would have been way better off just renting. Section 4, the price to rent ratio. How to evaluate your specific market. Now, what's really interesting here is that the math shifts dramatically based purely on your zip code. If you want to cut through the noise of your local housing market, you need to know the price to rent ratio. It's super simple. You just take the purchase price of a home and divide it by the annual rent for a comparable property in that exact same neighborhood. It's hands down the easiest, quickest tool you can use today to evaluate your own market. Here's the cheat sheet. If that ratio is below 16, buying is financially compelling. If it's above 25, renting completely dominates the math. And if you're in a coastal city like San Francisco or New York, where the ratio is over 30, honestly, owning property there is essentially a luxury tax that could take you decades to justify financially. Section 5, the hidden opportunity cost. Let's talk about the true price of a down payment. Let's pivot to a silent wealth killer that almost everyone ignores when they're desperately scraping together a 20% down payment, the opportunity cost. That $79,360 you put down on a median-priced home is capital that is now completely locked away. If you had kept renting and instead invested that exact same $79,000 into a broad market index fund, earning a historical 10% per year, It would grow to $205,000 in a decade, and that's without you adding another dime. That is the massive hidden cost of a down payment. All right, Section 6, Your Decision Framework. How to actually choose wisely. Look, none of this is an argument against buying a home. It's an argument for buying a home intelligently. Let's shift from the raw data to a highly practical, choose-your-own-adventure framework so you can decide what's best for you. Buying is the mathematically sound move when you know for sure you're staying in the area for 5 to 7+ years. It makes sense when you can easily afford the full monthly costs, including taxes and maintenance, when your down payment doesn't completely drain your emergency fund, and when you live in a market with a reasonable price-to-rent ratio. On the flip side, we really need to remove the societal stigma around renting. Renting is absolutely the superior choice when you're early in your career and value mobility. It's the smart move when you live in a crazy, high-cost coastal market, when you're actively building your financial foundation, or simply when your life timeline for the next 5 years is totally uncertain. Ultimately, a house is not primarily an investment. It's a place to live. It locks in your housing cost and it gives you stability. But please remember this crucial takeaway. The goal was never homeownership. The goal was always financial security. Sometimes those two things overlap perfectly, and sometimes they just don't. You absolutely need to know the difference before you sign anything. So I want to hear from you. Are you buying your own home regardless of the math because you just want that stability? Or are you firmly on team renting until the numbers actually make sense in your market? Drop it in the comments right now. I read all of them, and I would really love to see where you stand. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single week, we break down the money topics that actually matter, giving you the real math and the structured insights you need to build your wealth. See you next time.